All right, guys. Good morning, afternoon, evening. For watching this. Um, I apologize. The lack of posting earlier today. I have been having some audio issues with my software that I use to record this, so I apologize in advance. But let's just go ahead and jump right into the lesson. All right, guys. So today's objective is really to do some real life, real time practice with these skills that I've been teaching you. So, we have been focusing on claims, evidence, reasoning, and figuring out what types of evidence are best, what helps us the most when we are trying to decide between the truth and the lies and everything in between. So what we're going to be doing today, it's an older example because it's from 2010, 2013, that time frame. Um, which for some of you is a long time. For me, it's not so much because I'm old. Um, but it's going to be good practice for you to begin to hone your skills in evaluating these types of arguments. Um, especially and so this is the whole objective. For you to be able to do this in real life as a concerned, capable, high quality citizen in the future. Because right now, even in today's world, especially as we have this pandemic coming through our nation, we're going to be faced with choices. And we have to use evidence, information, data, um, information from experts to figure out what is going to be the best choice when we make those decisions. Even right now, there's an argument and debate going on about should we continue with social distancing, wearing our masks, um, or should we just go ahead and open up our communities again and just get back to work? And there's a lot of information coming from both sides, and you, as a citizen, are going to have to be able to argue for or against, figure out what you believe, and then do your best to make the correct decision. So, what we're going to be doing is doing kind of a real time practice with real situations and real people. Um, so, being able to think critically is super duper important. So, what we're going to be talking about today is killer whales and should they be kept in captivity? You'll hear the word orca a lot. Don't let that discourage you. It just is another word for whale. Um, so you probably remember what a killer whale looks like. So our next stop is about this issue. So it is important that you read this. With debating, we have two sides to every story. Usually it's a pro or a con side. Now, then not all of them are going to be that simple, of course, but for the sake of practice and learning, we're going to keep it simple for right now. Debates usually arise when people see things differently from another person. They have different experiences, different situations that they've lived through, and so there we have different opinions based on what we believe to be true. And anytime you are stepping into a debate, trying to weigh in and figure out what it's all about, you have to take in as much information as possible. So you're looking for information from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, the New York Times, NPR, BBC. You want to get as much information as possible so you can make an informed decision. An informed person has more information than anything else. Before taking a side, you have to read as much information about both sides of the story first. So, what we're going to be looking at is the issue brought up by this documentary film called Blackfish. And the Blackfish documentary came out in 2013, but the events that inspired it were from 2010. So the movie, I'm not going to show it to you, of course, because it is graphic. It involves death and it has a very emotional storyline, emotional music, and of course, lots of heartfelt stories and anecdotes from people who worked with captive killer whales. And it moved and inspired a lot of people to be activists for the rights of captive animals in zoos, in places like SeaWorld, and other types of zoological institutions. However, many people, like SeaWorld, say that the fact that it's biased because it only shows an emotional side of a story and might make you make an informed and not so great decision about keeping killer whales in captivity. Therefore, in order to make our best decision about what we believe in regards to killer whales in captivity, you need to hear both sides of the story. So again, trying to gather as much information as possible. So what we're going to be doing in this activity is we'll be watching a video, an article, and then tomorrow you will also have another article to read that is based around this. So what I want you to do right now is pause this video and watch this video. It is just the trailer, so it's completely appropriate for kids your age. I've watched it and previewed it and all that good stuff. But it does give you the gist of what Blackfish was all about. And as you watch, I want you to be thinking carefully about what the claim, what the argument that the documentary is trying to make about where we should be keeping killer whales in captivity or not, and whether it's wise to do that, especially with them having contact with human beings. So pause the video, watch this one, and then come back. All right. The second part of this argument, so remember the Blackfish documentary is part one. Part two is how does SeaWorld respond to this? So what we're going to do is there's an article in CNN, whether you like CNN or not, put that aside. Go ahead and click on the article and pull it up in another tab. I already have that done. And in the article, you get kind of a back and forth between the vice president of communications, so he's a big head honcho, Fred Jacobs of SeaWorld, and he answers some questions in regards to Blackfish and the documentary. So go ahead and click into the article, and I'm going to go ahead and read that to you. So just ignore all the ads and stuff. So the title of the article is SeaWorld Responds to Questions About Orcas Blackfish Film. So here we go. This week, CNN will present the premiere of Blackfish, a documentary that traces the history of killer whales in captivity leading up to the 2010 killing of SeaWorld trainer Dawn Brancheau by Tilikum, an orca previously associated with the death of 2 other people. SeaWorld has been critical of the film, which debuted at the Sundance Film Festival earlier this year, issuing this statement to CNN. Blackfish is billed as a documentary, but instead of a fair and balanced treatment of a complex subject/issue, the film is inaccurate and misleading, and regrettably takes advantage of or exploits a tragedy that remains a source of deep pain for Dawn Brancheau's family, friends, and colleagues, to promote its bias that killer whales should not be maintained in a zoological setting, aka a zoo. The film paints a distorted or inaccurate picture that withholds from viewers key facts about SeaWorld. Among them, that SeaWorld is one of the world's most respected zoological institutions. 2, that SeaWorld rescues, rehabilitates, and returns to the wild hundreds of wild animals every year. And 3, that SeaWorld commits millions of dollars annually to the conservation and scientific research. Perhaps most important, the film fails to mention SeaWorld's commitment to the safety of its team members and guests and to the care and welfare of its animals, as demonstrated by the company's continual refinement and improvement to its killer whale facilities, equipment, and procedures, both before and after the death of Dawn Brancheau. SeaWorld declined CNN's request to be interviewed on camera. However, Vice President of Communications Fred Jacobs agreed to answer some questions about the controversy over the film about keeping orcas in captivity. Here are Jacobs' unedited responses to CNN's question. CNN, in your statement, SeaWorld notes that Blackfish withholds from viewers key facts about SeaWorld, including that SeaWorld has rescued, rehabilitated, and returned to the wild hundreds of wild animals. Do any of those animals include orcas? SeaWorld. Yes. Though killer whales do not beach with the same frequency, so that means a beached whale is a whale that's stuck up on land. And when they do, it is typically a last-ditch effort at survival. Killer whales, like all stranded marine animals, are generally gravely ill, injured, malnourished, meaning they don't have enough nourishment or nutrients, dehydrated, without water, very old or very young, and do not survive very long on shore. Nonetheless, we have assisted whales many times, including killer whales. The largest whale ever to be rescued, rehabilitated, and returned to the wild, JJ, the orphan gray whale calf, was part of our rescue program. You can read about our role in rescuing killer whales from Barnes Lake in Alaska here, and our role in rescuing the killer whale named Springer here. We also assisted our colleagues at the Dolphinarium in Holland with veterinary care and husbandry for an orphaned and hearing-impaired juvenile killer whale they rescued. SeaWorld was part of the team to help Luna, as well as the young killer whale stranded near Puerto Vallarta in Mexico. We are also regularly called upon to do pathology on beached whales that do not survive. Pathology is figuring out if it has a disease or what that disease is, if it has one. CNN. What kind of rehabilitation and rescue efforts does SeaWorld provide for orcas? See the answer above. I should stress that the goal of our rescue program is the rehabilitation of an animal in need so that it can be successfully reintroduced to the wild. That occurs hundreds of times each year. Just this week, we released a beached common dolphin that was rescued and rehabilitated by our park in San Diego. There are a few organizations in the world that rescue more animals than we do. More than 23,000 since the program's inception. That's 23,000 animals that they saved. CNN. What are the benefits to keeping orcas in captivity? SeaWorld. The primary benefits are identical for many species in any accredited zoo institution: education and science. At SeaWorld, more than 11 million people each year, hundreds of millions since our first park opened its gates in 1964, have experienced killer whales in a way that is personal, enriching, and inspirational. It is our hope that every person who visited SeaWorld leaves with a greater understanding of and appreciation for all the animals we display, including killer whales. I have attached 2 documents that outline some of our peer-reviewed contributions to scientific understanding of killer whales. Note that this is just killer whales. We have similar bibliographies for many of the species living at SeaWorld. CNN. Many marine biologists and animal ethicists believe that orcas should not be kept in captivity because they are designed to travel hundreds of miles each day. Do you think the exposure that SeaWorld provides to millions of people who might not otherwise see a killer whale outweighs more than these concerns about impact of captivity on orcas? SeaWorld. While a killer whale can and occasionally might travel as much as 100 miles a day, it should be said that swimming that distance is not integral or important to a whale's health and well-being. It's likely foraging behavior. Foraging behavior is when an animal goes seeking out food because they can't make it for themselves. Given the challenge of finding and killing as much as 300 pounds of prey every day, killer whales in the wild, like any species, conserve energy and move only as much as necessary. Killer whales living in our parks are given all the food they require. They also exercise, receive veterinary care, live in the company of other members of their species, and receive mental stimulation. They adapt very well in a zoological setting. I should also note that the overwhelming majority of killer whales in our parks were born in the care of man. CNN. What specifically have we learned about captive orcas that has benefited marine biology and applies to orcas in the wild? SeaWorld. Please see the attached bibliographies. Much of what is known about the killer whale's anatomy, reproductive biology, and capacity or ability to learn was learned at SeaWorld and other accredited zoological institutions. CNN. SeaWorld trainer and vice president Michael Scarpuzzi notes the millions of safe interactions we have had with killer whales in the past 50 years. Does SeaWorld intend to put trainers back into the water with its killer whales? SeaWorld. Trainers enter the water only as part of in-water safety desensitization training. You can learn more about that process here. Our trainers have not entered the water for performances since February 2010, and we have no plans for them to return to that kind of interaction with our whales. CNN. How's Tilikum doing today? Is he participating in any of the SeaWorld shows? SeaWorld. He is doing well for a killer whale that is more than 30 years old. He interacts with other whales and our zoological staff, and he makes regular public appearances. CNN. What are SeaWorld's thoughts on sea pens as an alternative solution where humans can not only study and research killer whales, but enjoy them as well? SeaWorld. Sea pens can be effective